Also, everyone, since we're talking about AI is the new buzzword, with demand skyrocketing and industries grappling with the changing tech landscape. But our next guest says that while AI might offer a magic elixir, it may not necessarily be a hockey stick inflection for one sector. That's telecom. Frank Louthan, who is the Raymond James Telecommunications Analyst, joins us now. Frank, great to have you here with us this morning. All right, so what is the magical elixir, perhaps, here, that as you look at it from your perspective?
Yeah, we look at this from our as a team perspective. We've taken a deep dive into AI, and from my side, where I sit covering telecom and data services providers, this is absolutely a positive for them. There's a tailwind, but it's just more of the thing that kind of keeps the growth going. It's not necessarily a hockey stick inflection like we've seen with some of the other sectors like chips and so forth that are more directly involved. But there's absolutely going to be more demand from AI going to data centers, going to fiber providers and network providers and wireless carriers. That is going to keep the growth going over the next few years. It's just a lot more muted than people might think, and it's early days in how it's impacting the sectors.
Frank, I don't know if you just got a chance to hear our anchor, Shauna Smith, talking about Morgan Stanley's price target on Microsoft and seeing where Microsoft lands in terms of the AI space. Who in the telecom space would you say are the leaders and have the best chance at taking advantage of this huge focus on AI and particularly generative AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So the data centers that we cover, Equinix and Digital Realty Trust, are the ones that are the most directly affected in the short term. That's where companies like Microsoft and cloud providers are going to be deploying their AI engines. You're going to be deploying various things for the AI instances, and you're going to be deploying them for the training modules and so forth. And that's where you're going to see that. And it's also, we're already starting to see it on the margin with some pricing and so forth at some data centers where some of the AI deployments are paying very high prices to get access to data. And the real important thing there is when you look at AI, it's generally run by GPUs versus CPUs. GPUs use more power. When you look at the data center industry, they sell power. They don't sell space. So as you have a demand driver that's going to use a lot more energy and so forth, that's a very good driver for demand. So we would look at Equinix and Digital Realty as the two most directly impacted by the sector, with the telecommunications networks being after that.
And so some of the names specifically within this, break down some more of those, because you mentioned Equinix, but there are a few others, Akamai, with even within that coverage that you're looking across with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Akamai is another one. The content delivery networks are going to benefit because you have to remember, someone's got to get the data in and out of the data center and in and out of the AI engine and so forth for all the applications. So you're going to need those delivery networks. But then Akamai and others have also developed software security platforms, which are going to be important as well. When you're moving all that data and you're putting it into these various AI platforms, there's going to be increased attacks on software security. You're going to need increased security for the data that you're collecting. Plus, it's going to need to be data that's going to need to be collected and deployed on a much broader basis. You can even make a case that you're going to need to use AI out further in the edge of networks to better filter the type of information that's being sent back, so you don't send everything back, because it ends up being very costly. So we think the content delivery networks also benefit. And then, of course, those that provide fiber and so forth. And eventually, you'll see something on the wireless side. Americans value entertainment and convenience above almost all else. And at some point, if you're going to have a successful commercial AI device, it's going to need to work on a cell phone. So at some point, that will drive more traffic there as well. But all of these things take more time, and which is why we think the more direct beneficiaries in the near term, at least, are the data centers and then probably the CDN.
So I want to really quickly draw this out to something you also say in your note. You said the AI debate really should be about degree rather than direction. And of course, we know that the spending is happening, the investment is happening. But is it big enough to turn this into a question and broad enough to offset any kind of headwinds coming?
I definitely think it is. It's just slow, right? All these things are sort of gradual changes. We like to say about telecom that the rate of change is very slow, even when it speeds up. I've been covering this industry for a long time, and there's still copper phone lines out there, right? So it takes a long time for the industry to transition. But when you see a data transition like this, or a technology transition, like we saw cloud computing a few years ago and so forth, it is a positive. It does tend to, over time, replace older technology and continue to keep the growth going. So That's why we're confident in the growth rates we have for our companies going forward, because this is coming on the backside and going to continue to push revenue and replace where older technology falls off.
Frank, would much rather ask a question about that sick Les Paul you got in the background there, but I do want to include within our conversation here, at least for the day, what is the timeline that investors should be keeping in mind when they're talking about this type of transformation and how AI could potentially impact the telecommunications sector?
Yeah, so when you look over the next 2 or 3 years, I think you'll see it be more pervasive, right? So, for example, the data centers that I referenced, Equinix and DLR, have both said that AI is a part of their conversations, but it's still a very small part of their booking, so it's not quite here in a real meaningful way. And I would say the same thing for the telecom providers and so forth. It's something that when we talk to them, they've all had conversations with their customers. It's things that they're aware of. They're trying to be positioned for when the demand is there. But it's still, on a relative basis, a very small amount of computing platforms and deployments and network traffic. So I would say you fast forward about 3 years, we'll see it be much more pervasive, but it's definitely something that's creating a lot of conversation. And again, if you look at, okay, what's going to continue the growth case over the next year as other technologies sort of fall off, I think you can say AI is the thing that's going to come up and fill in the demand void going forward.
Well, that was certainly the case in the last round of earnings. We'll see if that's the buzzword this round. Frank Louthan, Raymond James, Telecommunications Analyst, thank you so much for joining us this morning.